paint, and you use a very little amount of paint. Your surfaces are quite different. You use paint to the extent that it's almost sculptural, and you use it in a determinedly flat way, don't you, Michael?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Well, I mean, in such a flat way, I mean, I'm always, I'm seeking to almost remove the hand of the artist, so that it's almost like I wasn't there. And obviously I work for photography, so that's a whole other thing to look at. But I mean, Ben makes such an artistic gesture, and I feel often that I'm seeking to almost remove that gesture. It's something that's dismissed.
I remember people keep asking if we're going to have another third baby, particularly in fucking Brisbane, because that tiny little beautiful creature. But I remember one night when my little girl was about 3 weeks old, and Kylie and I thought our children aren't going to survive us. Who ever thought it was a good idea for us to have two? And I walked in there one night. I hadn't slept for weeks, 3 weeks, and I walked into my daughter's room and I had a bit of pigment and a piece of paper and a brush, and I made this little mark of her head asleep for the first time in fucking 3 weeks. and it remains one of, and it took me 2 minutes, but it was one of those things that I remembered what it was about to be a painter and what it was about to be an artist. And for me, it's about making something very quickly in a very direct response to what I've just witnessed, which at that point was hell. And now I want a third one to be able to do it again. Because of you, Michael, Zavros, and Alison Q.
Well, that bespeaks a kind of tenderness. If you look at all of Rembrandt's work, you know, those great pictures, probably the most affecting picture that he ever painted was that gorgeous little image of his son Titus, which is in the Northern Simon Museum just outside Los Angeles. And I guess I'm going to ask you both whether there's an emotional quotient in your work, where Rembrandt, the great skilled painter with a studio, 1,000 pictures, incredibly renowned, in this one little image, full on, full face of his beautiful son, gorgeous, light painting, spontaneous, it kind of just urges love out of the picture to you. Do you think that there is a point at which you can inject emotionalism into your art, the way a singer can?
Often I think my work seeks to keep emotion at bay, but there's such an emotional response in the decision making. Like my artistic moment is when I decide what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it, and what I do to an image, because I work from images, and then everything after that is sort of a technical response, I suppose. But it's at that moment that I do feel something very emotional. I get very excited about what I'm going to make and why I'm going to do it. And then everything after that is, I suspect, very different to what Ben would do, and have this very visceral, emotional, process-based response. Technically, I don't think there's anything very masculine about the way that I work. I just work with these tiny, girly little brushes like this. We make about this much in a day. But I think that in terms of subject matter, I think that the masculine is never far from what it is that I want to make, or why I want to do it. And although I don't set out to make anything especially masculine, I think that my work is in many respects kind of autobiographical, and I'm not that masculine necessarily. So, but I think it's a very particular kind of contemporary masculinity, I suppose. It's interesting that painting is still referred to as kind of a masculine sport in art making, but yeah, I'm not sure why.
What about you, Ben? What do you feel about that? I mean,
Jermaine Greer said to me that she felt like I was throwing sperm on the canvas.
She might have preferred you were throwing it in her direction, but
well, that did
no,
my mind.
She can hear.
I have to say, Jermaine Greer is one of the legends of my life.
She's great.
Incredible human. And I saw what she was saying, but I don't think of myself as a particularly masculine person. I don't think that, I mean, I've been sort of a participant in the crazy masculinity of Australian males, but a critical participant of it most of the time. I think it's ridiculous what young men have to go through to become adults in this society. Absolutely absurd. And Germaine saw that. She sort of told me about my sperm paintings, which is quite confronting. But I guess that I think good art, sexuality has nothing to do with good art, nothing at all. And how you make a painting, in the end, I do think my marks are quite masculine, but in the end, Michael's paintings aren't very masculine marks, but still very confronting paintings. Has nothing to do with the way the pheromones that you adapt to the paintbrush.
I often think, well, why paint? Why not anything else? Why not any other kind of mark making? But paint is just this liquid colour and tone that just is the most immediate way to express something. And I think often an artist is like a cipher for what is happening around them, or what they're experiencing, what their life is to them.
Do you think that there is a need for some kind of sobering return to balance in all of this? I mean, people are paying vast amounts for pictures that we kind of know are going to be worthless soon. I mean, down at Mona, there's a picture by Juan de Vila that is really a seriously bad picture in my view. And somebody paid a lot of money for it. It's going to be consigned to a basement, and maybe like some old, dodgy, third-rate pre-Raphaelite, and they come out one day and be de-obsession. Do you look for any kind of permanence in your work? Do you want it to live on, or is it something that is gratifying, an instant urge for you to create, as well as an urge for the market to find the next best thing? Because we have to admit there is an art market. There always has been since the Renaissance.
I've definitely noticed that since I went to art school, and I was kind of shocked to see what was deemed as important. Definitely, for the last 20 years, that's been a movement in Australia that I think's been a movement of trying to find itself find its feet in sort of international spectrum. And it's only in the last few years that I realised that I just have to ignore that. And Margaret Olley telling me constantly to ignore it. That you just have to make a good painting is a good painting, and a good piece of art is a good piece of art. My practice is so fast and furious in a way that it's, for me, as much about being in the studio and being a part of the practice that I'm involved in, that no, it's almost impermanence. It happens so fast. Margaret Olley's painting took me 1 hour and 30 minutes to make. So it's not, like, compared to Michael, you should ask Michael that question.
Well, I will. Okay, Michael.
I don't know if I'm seeking permanence or impermanence. It's like, I don't really think about it that way. I think if I can not think about something like that, then I'm going to make better work. And as Ben was saying, you know, the last few years, not really thinking about a market or thinking about your audience. It's a place that I've managed to find after, I think, an earlier career where I had some success in the art world with a capital A and some commercial success as a very young artist. And I think that can really stifle you. It can really sort of set you on a path where you can decide to repeat yourself forever, or it can liberate you. And I'm very glad that I've made some brave or difficult decisions that now leave me where I really only make what I want to make. And I think a good thing about that is that you actually make better work if you find yourself in that position. And I don't really ask questions about permanence or impermanence. I mean, I know that if I prime it properly or if I use good paint, then it's going to last a lot longer than I will. But that's about as permanent as I think I tend to think.
That's one of the great differences, of course, between classical art, where people did work with these patrons, and now they can actually do them to please themselves, because there is a more cultivated audience out there to appreciate it. In terms of media, when I grew up, there was absolutely very little written about art. We had the announcement every year of the Archibald Prize winner, who would always be William Dargie or Ivor Hill, and occasionally Margaret Ollie's portrait by Bell, which was hated. People said she looked as if she had a cutlet on the back of her head.
I should interrupt. George Pell wrote in the Catholic Weekly 2 weeks ago.
Oh, he's such a reliable critic.
He wrote and my uncle, who's a practicing Catholic, forwarded it to me to check out what I would think. And George Pell said, you know, William Dobell would have been hung in this year's Archibald. Ben Quilty would never have been hung in the Archibald of 1948.
That's probably true. But
it can be very overexposed, and at the same time that these profile pieces keep growing and growing, critical writing about art seems to be diminishing, and I think that's something that's a bit disappointing. But it's something that you sort of have a love-hate relationship with. You sort of need these profile pieces, and even if they create these one-dimensional profiles of you as being so attached to your subject matter that you look and act very much like something that you paint. And I think exactly the same thing happens to Ben. I don't know, it's just it's part of the beast, and we're part of this machine that we sort of have to play along with.
There's a machine called criticism, of course, and I'm guilty of it, having been a food critic for 26 years, and a restaurant critic. And awfully good food tonight, by the way, don't you think? Absolutely good. I went to this restaurant last night. God knows what they were serving. It looked like a hat. Microwave herbs and things that had been hit with nitrogen and little bits of this. I mean, it really looked like a train wreck. And it's getting 16.5 and 17 points in the reviews. And I thought, what is going on here? People are being drawn to this. And people are always drawn by criticism. You get a great review, you sell out. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. But it's a personal view that the standard of art criticism has become rather weakened here in Australia. And we've lost some good art critics to the other parts of the world, like Smee and Benjamin Granocchio to New York. How important is the critic's role in all of this? I mean,
we live in a very odd community, a very strange culture, where sportsmen are held up as the #1 thing, which is just ridiculous and absurd. And I love sport, and I'm good at it. Kind of good at it. I can play sport, I'm honest about it, but it's fucking ridiculous that they are the most important people in our society.
Well, I'm no good at it, and I don't play it, and I resent the fact that the ABC News spends 15 minutes
I thought of that last
every night. I mean, at 7:15, Madam goes off into sport. The world is falling apart. Cars, all the major topics. Go to SBS at 6:30 and you'll hear what's going on in the world. The ABC, our national broadcaster, has completely dispensed with any kind of artistic coverage or any pretense to give any support for the performing arts or the visual arts. And I think that's a bloody disgrace.
Well, that's your answer. That's my answer.
Is that your answer? That's correct. We're in unity.
I still own a Tirana. My wife won't get in it because it's caught on fire twice since we've been together, and I had to put it out with my hands both times, but I still own my Tirana. And I was going to sell it. I didn't want to be an old man with a car collection. I just thought that was an ugly thing, and Evo would have bashed me for it as well. And then at the beginning of the year I put it in a car magazine called something Cars. How do you know that? You all have Tiranas. Oh, E-Type J, it's my favourite car. And I put it in that, and it ran for 1 month, and then I won the Archibald and I took the ad out. Keeping the Tirana.